Hey everyone, and welcome back to the RFD show. We are so excited to have a amazing discussion between the lads here at the RFD family. I'm just gonna go out and just say I hope that you guys are doing well. Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we really appreciate all the fans, everyone that is listening, and everyone that is commenting on our videos and tweeting. We are really excited. Today we are joined by the Jackal and Dan the Man. Let's go with you, Jackal. Jackal, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, and you?
Good, good. Can't complain. Can't complain. Daniel, how are you?
Just a lazy Sunday. So continuing on that. So yeah.
Just a lazy Sunday. That's good news. That's good news. So in this episode, we are just gonna have a awesome discussion. I almost went to Afrikaans. Just to have an awesome discussion. And yes, Daniel knows what I wanted to say. A lekker discussion. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
put it out there. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it. So in this episode, we are going to talk a bit about Matt Toomua. Okay. I don't know what you're feeling about Matt Toomua. I think he was a great player at a stage in Australia rugby. I think if they kept him in Australia, he might have become the next big thing after Bernard Foley, Matt Giteau, Quade Cooper, those guys. He did definitely have the talent, so that I'm not taking away from him. But he's been coming out and being very you know conversational about everything, about Super Rugby, about how his beliefs are in rugby and what needs to change. He's been very vocal about that. uh Jock, what do you think he's trying to accomplish? Well, what is your overall thoughts about Maximo, and what do you think he wants to accomplish in this vocal time in his life, speaking up out about rugby?
Well, I think in this time, in this day and age, everybody has an opinion and they have a really big platform to state their opinion. So I think he's just one of those guys who has the confidence to go out and say what he thinks, what his opinion is on a matter. Is it always necessary? I don't think so. But yes, I think this some of the things he stated is I can see where he's coming from, and the other things I'm just like, okay, maybe you're just trying to stir the pot a bit. So
It's very interesting because I agree with you. All the rugby players today have such an amazing platform to speak out. I mean, if we go into the heydays in '95, Joel Stransky didn't have Twitter, he didn't have Instagram, they didn't have these platforms to go on and post their opinions, post what they believe, post how they would change things, and just overall putting out their views into the world. There weren't platforms like that. Today, every sports person can become a celebrity. It wasn't 20 years ago. I don't know, Daniel, do you think the same? What I'm trying to explain here, what is your feeling about this whole situation, the way that they have a platform to speak out?
Yes, it's both a blessing and a curse, as we've seen in the past, because there's a couple of players that didn't use it to advantage, or when they said something, they were ridiculed for it. And in today's day, you can't say anything. You have to rethink your tweet 2, 3, 4, 5 times before you post it. So
Mm.
he's actually taking a brave step, and it seems that Australia doesn't have like a double standard when it comes to stuff. But some players can say what they want, and other players cannot. And yes, I believe that in the old days there wasn't a platform to mention something, because we'll only hear how Nas didn't pass. That will be probably the only tweet that goes around for days. And Nas would just say, "Did you see my performance this weekend?" And the center said, "What performance? I didn't see the ball." So there's a difference between eras as well, because the game has evolved to such a level where travel was at one point wasn't even a factor anymore, and now players just wants
Mm.
convenience, because that's what the world is going to.
yes,
So I believe that he wants convenience to play, because he played in the Premiership, I think in the English Premiership for Leicester Tigers, and the convenience there was he travelled to European nations, and that's the furthest he travelled. And when Australia
hmm
toured to Europe, he was still in Europe. So he actually flew from England to Japan for the Rugby World Cup or something like that. He didn't even join the Australian squad, or I don't know how that worked, but it was convenient for him. And now he has to travel to Super Rugby, so now he's complaining. So he just has to probably suck it up, or they have to change the rules of how the Super Rugby is going to work. So.
I agree with that completely. I think, and this is going to be a very interesting discussion. I would love a Jock's take on this. Just after I made my point, is that the first thing that he came out and just said needs to change is Super Rugby's format. Okay, so he came out and said the model, and I'm direct quoting him here, that maybe the model that I've got in or got is a little bit aged and outdated, and maybe we need to have a rethink. That's literally what he said, a rethink of this model. It's a bit, I don't know what he is trying to say, because since I can remember and since Super Rugby has started developing into this big competition, the board and just Saru and every other board that is connected with the decision making never stopped with rethinking Super Rugby. That's why we have new rules. Again, if you go back to 2007 World Cup, they played or they enforced rules differently in '07 than today. So the
Yes.
rules, the whole format has already changed. We didn't have conferences. Now we have conferences. So I'm trying to say that I don't know, because the things that he wanted to change hasn't been changed. He's stating they need to rethink the whole competition. But things have changed in the last 10 years. Absolutely. If you can't see that, I'm probably watching a different Super Rugby format than you. So, Jock, what is your feeling about this? Do you think he has a very good point to rethink, as he states, Super Rugby format, or is it one change that actually needs to be made? What is your thoughts about that?
Um, well, I agree with what Daniel said earlier about convenience. Um, if you're in Europe, it's not that far travel as to say from Australia to South Africa or to Argentina. But I don't think the rethink model um, they set out is the best model to do. I mean, I totally agree with you. Like Super Rugby has evolved. Rugby as a whole game has evolved. The rules changed. Everything is evolving to suit the players better. And I'm saying it over and over again. It's a professional sport. There is traveling involved. There
Mm,
is sacrifices you need to make. Um, and why all of a sudden is it a problem now after 25 years of Super Rugby? I think Super Rugby grew a lot with Argentina and Japan coming in. Um, I don't know. I'm between the two if Japan should have joined our Super Rugby, but I see why. But again, the rethink model they have, I think Stephen Moore also said they should uh, like kick South Africa and Argentina out and only have
mm,
a Australasian like type of Super Rugby. Maybe bring the Sunwolves or the Japan clubs back because they're in the same time zone, and they always say, "Oh no, it's for the fans." Because if I'm a fan in Australia and we play a game in South Africa, I don't want to get up at 1 in the morning to watch a game, which I understand. But yeah, for me, there's always highlights. uh, but I also like to watch a live game. But I think the way he said it and the way they think about it for me does not does not seem right, and it's it's not forward thinking for me. That's the
mm,
whole thing, because now you want to bring everything back to Australia, but there's no development of the game in new countries. That's why we brought in Japan and Argentina.
mm.
Um, should we bring in Namibia maybe from Africa, or Brazil from South America, make the thing bigger? Should we get Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa in and get their clubs? That's the thinking I'm going about. Get Singapore in, all those that's in the time zones of Super Rugby already. Get them in, maybe in a lower league, not necessarily Super Rugby, but in a lower league, so the rugby game can develop in that country's and not going back to your own country and only keeping it for yourself. If you know where I'm going.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you there. I think that the problem is, let's say if they did the Australia Asian thing, and they brought in, for example, Japan or Japanese clubs, what or how will they decide the salary cap in that new competition? Just let me quickly run my thoughts here. Um, we all know Japanese clubs have wealthy pockets, deep
Mm.
pockets to pay and to get in some of the best skilled rugby players we have on the continent. Well, not even just on the continent, on the globe. So, for example, let's say we weren't in the Super Rugby. South Africa gets kicked out, Argentina gets kicked out. They take a couple of clubs of Japan, boom, new tournament. But the salary gap between Japanese clubs and Australian clubs is almost 50 to 80%.
Wow.
What's going to happen? I'm not going to play. I'm not, no offense. But if
Mm.
I have a chance to go play in a Japanese club, because I'm still going to play against the Crusaders, I'm still going to play against the Brumbies, the Waratahs, the Canes, all those players.
Yes.
I'm still going to play against them. So the gap is going to be almost 50%. We can just call it
Mm.
50% flat to go play rather for those countries. And also, with that being said, we all know how Japan has evolved into a rugby nation. They have the latest tech, the latest what do you call it, medical facilities to get rugby players ready. The coaches we Daniel and I spoke about Jamie Joseph off camera as well, or off air
Yes.
as well, a couple of days ago, how we praised him as a good coach, great coach
Mm.
actually. So Daniel, what do you think about that? Do you agree what I'm saying, or do you think that won't happen? People, even if we get kicked out, people will still be loyal to their clubs.
So just thinking about how he said he calls for to rethink the outdated Super Rugby, because that's what I think that's more of the words he used. And the last statement he mentioned is, I'm just trying to find it so I can read it. So he says, if I'm a Rebels member, what do I get? I get 7 home games, maybe 5 against teams I know, 2 or 3 against teams that I don't know or don't care about, and then 3 games are in zones that aren't suitable. So, and then he goes on to say, it's not for me personally. If I'm a supporter, I don't think that's an attractive product. I really don't. So the thing is that technology is at such a point that you can look at it and you can watch highlights and you can watch it live and you can record it and you can start trying to stay spoiler free if you have good colleagues at work and stuff. But the thing that makes me angry is that he says that I don't know or don't care about. And that's a player attitude.
Absolutely.
That's not a thing
Yes.
that I'm playing Super Rugby to play rugby because I want to play rugby. That's something about money. Because
Yes.
if I don't care who I'm playing against, then it's not for me about the game. Then it's for me about what I'm going to get after the game. And so that's probably South African teams he's talking about. Probably South African teams, probably the Argentinian teams, and the Japan team. So because it's a weird thing to think that you'll play 7 games at home, and yes, you want to play at home, you want to play in front of your own crowd, but you get to earn the final in front of your own crowd if you have a good season. So just make your season count, and then have a home final, and then you'll play for international teams if you're good enough. So yeah, and I understand they have to rethink that. You have to shorten the games. Just make I think we had a discussion about it in one of our previous podcasts. Take 4 teams per nation and just shorten the term because it's too much rugby. That is the point where it gets to. It's too much rugby
Mm.
and they travel too much because the schedules suck. So you have a 4-week
Yes.
tour, which are away from home, and usually they fly back to New Zealand and play there, and then they go back home. And that's the problem. Just schedule this. Just make the schedules so that you can play your first 7 games away and then your last 7 games at home, or just shorten the competition. 11 games is enough to reach some type of a super 12. That was probably the most efficient Super Rugby we had.
Yes.
And then find someone who wants to play rugby. If you don't want to play rugby because they don't pay you enough and you can't care less, don't play. Your attitude stinks.
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement that Daniel made. Just coming back to the quote he said, teams you don't care about and all that stuff. I totally agree. That's like a player mentality. For me as a fan, and the fans that I know, um, it's not that we don't care about the other teams. We still want to see the other teams play. Um, if I'm a Blue Bull supporter, I'm still gonna watch a Reds Hurricanes game. It's not that I don't care about that. I'm a rugby fan. I'm not just a Blue Bulls fan. So I don't really get why he said the teams we don't care about. I just want to make that point. If you're a rugby fan, you tend to watch most of the rugby games over the weekends. Granted, some of them is 12 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning, but there's always highlights. If I can't watch a game, I go back and watch the highlights.
Yes.
That just gives me insight on the way Australian teams play, the Argentinians play, the way the mentality it is for a New Zealand team to go out and play 85 minutes if they want to. It shows me the mentality of the nation and the rugby players there. If your mentality is, I don't care about this team, what does it say about you? And also, like Daniel said, if it's all about the home games, make your season count to get that semi-final or final, whatever it is you want to do. But don't go out and complain about other teams. Focus on your team. Focus on the development of your team. And I also agree with Daniel. Shorten the log, if I can say it like that. Get fewer teams in. Get the top 4 teams and get the competition back to its strength. Get the attendance up at the game, because that's something every nation struggles with except Argentina for some reason, but they're so passionate. But yeah, I totally agree with what Daniel said on that.
This is a very interesting discussion, and I just also want to get your thoughts. A relegated system. Are you guys for a relegated system, like soccer, for example, first division, second division, in a Super Rugby format? So then there would be rather a 7 teams or 8 teams in the first division, and then there will be a relegated division as well. I want to first go to Daniel and then to Jock.
Well, this is the perfect opportunity to promote local rugby. So let's say, so in South Africa we have 9 provinces, which is a lot. So let's say, for instance, that you have your 4 strongest teams currently is the Stormers, the Sharks, the Lions, and the Bulls. Most known, strongest, has been probably in the competition the longest. So what you can do is you can use your Curry Cup as a promotional invite. So that, let's say, the Kings is a strong team this year. They play the Curry Cup, they win the Curry Cup. Obviously, the 5th team falls out, and the 4th team till first team goes to play Super Rugby. So the Kings will be in, and then if the Bulls are on 5th place, they'll fall out, or depending on how the log lies. So you can have a completely different team. So that'll keep the Super Rugby intense. Still new, because you'll be playing different teams, and you'll get an advantage on technology then, because I don't have match tapes of the Kings playing Super Rugby against the Crusaders for the last 2-3 years. So how do I know what game plan they're playing? I don't know the players. I don't know. So you can still keep it interesting. And yes, you'll probably lose a bit of fans here because they don't know the team and they don't know the players and stuff. But that's a chance for someone to prove himself. And isn't that what rugby is about? Evolving the game, getting more exposure. And then once again, what's important? What's more important? I understand money is important to keep the game alive, but what's more important, is it the money, or actually that there's a rugby game on? And that's where passion and a motive differs. So
I agree. It's going to be interesting to see if there's a relegation format in Super Rugby. Again, I think it gives, how do you say it? Gives more opportunity for other teams, like, for instance, the Kings, to play against top teams, because we in South Africa, we tend to look at our own teams, and we go into our own coaching staff and on all of that, which I think is great. But also you need to learn from other nations as well. So if you play a team like Hurricanes or the Rebels or whatever, you get new stuff. You learn about new stuff instead of getting into a rhythm of choosing the same types of coaches, the same type of plays you play the whole time. And I think that's where some of the teams struggle and they fall because of that. We saw it with the Kings a few years back where they made a name for themselves and then they didn't develop for me as fast as the other teams or as well as the other teams, and they like fell out of Super Rugby and went to the Pro 14 where they didn't do that great as well. So for me personally, I don't know if the relegation will work, but I think it's a good opportunity for other teams to try and improve themselves. Let's say for the Bulls, because I'm a Bulls fan, the Bulls didn't do that great over the past few years, but if they know there's a relegation coming, they will work that much harder. They'll work even better to stop them from getting relegated. So it might be a good thing for teams, but yeah, I don't know if I'm convinced about the relegation.
Yes, Jock, I think that's really interesting. But I agree with you what you just said about the Bulls, right? So the one thing that I have a problem with Super Rugby, and that's actually the only problem that I have. I don't have the same problem that clearly our rival Matt Toomua has in the way that he doesn't care who they play, which is again it's ridiculous. But the one problem that I have for Super Rugby is that there's no system that when you lack, you will get kicked out. Just let me say that one more time. If we are soccer supporters and we watch soccer, the last two teams on the log normally gets relegated, and of course,
Yeah.
other two teams in a different what do you call it, division gets then upgraded to the main competition. And I think if that was in rugby as well, there would be a different type of play. I'm not saying that any coaches is trying to let their team fail, or I hope not. I
Yeah.
really hope that's not the case. But for a long period of time, if I don't want to disrespect Lions supporters, but for a long time, the Lions did not do very well in Super Rugby. And I can own up, the Stormers did very poorly in Super Rugby for a long time. Definitely, where the Bulls was dominant and the Sharks could pitch up the day. I'm not going to say they were dominant, but they could pitch up the day. So what would have happened is they in a relegated system, they would have kicked out the lower team, and I think that would just spark up competition. That's actually what I'm trying to say. It's going to spark up competition. They need to get better, otherwise they're going to get kicked out. There's no comfort zones. It's not I'm still going to be in the competition next year even if I fail this year. No, if I fail this year and I'm the last on the log, I should actually be relegated to a different, competition, and give another team the time to get up, get into the main competition, and hopefully show, they can make it work. So that's actually what I'm trying to say is if there were a system like that, I think that would really, the competition will be spiced up once again. And I'm not trying to say that there isn't competition at this current stage. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying internally, I think some coaches have taken a step back and saying, you know what, we're still going to be in the competition. We can build 5 years and build a team and then win. Okay, I get your strategy, but this is still a competition. We want to play competitive rugby. Jock, what are your thoughts about that?
I just want to add, let's take the New Zealand Conference for instance, and the Blues over the past few years. We all know they weren't the best New Zealand team, but let's say, okay, exclude Argentina now. Do we know of a team other than the the top teams in New Zealand that's not playing. I don't think there is. But if you take, the log conference. It's the conferences now, like the Australian conference, New Zealand conference, South African conference. What do you think if they took only the conference, the bottom of the conference, of each conference, and relegated them and put the team, another team back? Because you can take the Western Force from Australia, and you can take the Cheetahs or the Kings, whoever comes up in South Africa. There's a few clubs and stuff, but I don't know if there's a New Zealand team that can come up from a bottom tier, maybe just a normal club, but I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if something like that will maybe be in consideration.
I get what you're saying there, and I completely understand. Of course, they have their ITM Cup, which, if I'm not mistaken, and Daniel can correct me here, is like their Curry Cup, in some way, because most of the Super Rugby guys, if they don't get the selection to the All Blacks, they go play in their ITM respected franchises.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, so that can also be the case. But either way, a team can be pulled up somehow. That's the only thing that I'm trying to say, and that can be spiced up maybe with imagine a Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji gets a club in. Just imagine that. So they get relegated. As a New Zealand team gets relegated, and I don't know, we get a flying Samoan, Tongan, I don't know, club in, and
The Islanders.
The Islanders, yes, they just call themselves the Islanders, and they have their own competition in the islands to get them into the Super Rugby. That would be amazing. That would be awesome, because that's exposure to the biggest tournament in the Southern Hemisphere. So yes, but with that being said, thank you so much for joining us in this episode. Daniel, if you have a question of the day, it's your time to shine. Let's go.
So Rugby Australia is, well, in the position that most Southern Hemisphere teams are in, losing players to overseas. So how big of a difference does South African players playing in the Premiership and in the top 14 and the Pro 14 make in their leagues? So how much times is a South African player man of the match overseas? So yeah.
Great question.
That's good.
You can tweet us at Rugby for Days, or even DM us on Instagram, also Rugby for Days. We're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on all the respective platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And then for all the listeners, till next time, #RFD family.